to get started asking about the development of the script and why you were inspired to write the story overall, and just that process of working on the script as well.
Yeah, so it's something that kind of it stems back really over 10 years to the point where I was studying Arabic and politics for my undergraduate degree, and I, as part of that, I spent a year living in Syria just the year before the civil war started. So I think that's really sort of my initial connection to the subject, but then also part of that degree. You study a lot about Orientalism and the construction of the other, and then in my final year, I ended up writing my dissertation on the a representation of Arab and Muslims in American cinema and TV. And then I think that really sort of stuck with me. But then flash forward, I kind of went to film school, went into filmmaking. But I ended up also working with an NGO in a refugee camp in southern Algeria. And we were working on a project that was specifically about identity and how the label of being a refugee affects identity. And I think the subject matter really sort of stuck to me. And kind of flash forward again, the refugee crisis, it became very prevalent in the media. And I was really struck by the representation of refugees and how on the one side we had the demonizing of refugees, and on the other we had the pitying of refugees. And they were just sort of spoken about in terms of sort of numbers and statistics as well. And I felt like I really wanted to make a film about this that humanizes the refugee experience and like looks at refugees as people like us that we can relate to. So I set off on this journey to write the screenplay. And then the kind of big part, aspects of that was with a list of things to avoid. And sort of top of that list was using a Western character as a vehicle to tell a story about refugees. So I really wanted to put the refugee characters front and center of the film. And then the other, big thing was sensationalizing the subject. So I kind of wanted to get rid of the sort of the journey and all of the things that the media were focused on, and just focus on the sort of simple human kind of emotional story of Omar.
And how did your experiences and maybe influence on writing the script as well? And did you maybe do any additional research or really development into creating the story as well?
Yeah, so when I kind of set off on that journey to write the screenplay, it took a really it took a long time, because it was I also needed to find I needed to be an authority over this subject matter, and there's a huge amount of responsibility. So I had I did a huge amount of research, and spoke to people that had been through the asylum system. Spoke to organizations and NGOs that work with refugees and asylum seekers on a day-to-day basis. And part of that was kind of also to really check my thinking in how I was approaching this subject matter, and to speak to asylum seekers and ask them about, because I knew that I wanted to use humor. I knew that I wanted this to kind of be this balance of kind of comedy and drama, and to speak to them about using humor with this topic. And the response was so positive, and people were saying like, yes, like please, like find humor in this, because people are tired of these kind of depictions of the tragedy and the sort of focus on the sort of the just pure kind of drama of these narratives. So it went through a big process of research, and then as we kind of move forward as well into production, we also involved people who'd been through the asylum system, and we had refugees working on the film as extras and in some of the small roles, and also collaborating with the actors as part of the rehearsal process as well.
And speaking of the actors, I also wanted to ask about that experience as well, and just the casting and how you went about deciding who you wanted to star in the film as well.
It was it was a sort of really thorough audition process, and we did a worldwide search. We kind of auditioned people all over the world, and for for Omar, when we brought Amir on board, this was actually, I found an image of him online. And as soon as I found that image, I think I went to bed that night and I dreamt of Amir in the role of Omar.
Mhm.
And I just knew that it was him, that it had to be him. And there was just something about, I knew how we were, how we were going to shoot the film and how we were going to look at this character through the lens, and the sort of the face is very important to me in my filmmaking. And yeah, and then so we ended up we got in touch through the casting director with Amir, and he did an initial self tape, and he was really brilliant from the very beginning, and then he came into audition in person, and yeah, he was just fantastic. And yeah, with the other characters, it was just a big, it was a long journey, and a thorough process, and also at times kind of a little bit experimental. We had for the role of Farhad, we had Vikash and come in and do a half-hour improvised interview in character, and that was sort of maybe 5 auditions in as well. So we really kind of put people through a process. But again, he was just so brilliant. All of them were.
And also, what was the experience like once the actors signed on to star in the film, to really work with them and really developing the characters a little more, and that process of maybe rehearsing with them and really collaborating with them as well?
Yeah, I mean, once they were brought on, I mean, even from kind of actually even kind of taking a step back, and in the audition process, at that point, we also kind of we did chemistry tests as well at that point. So we brought Amir on I think he was the first person we brought on, and then we tried him with different Farhads, and we tried different combinations of Wasif and Abedi and the 4 guys together. And then once they came on board, we had a really good rehearsal process as well, prior to the shoot, and I think we had 2 weeks of rehearsal, and we just, it was something that's so important to me, but it was just incredibly important for the film, because it's also, there's a stylistic element to the performances as well. So it was kind of, on one hand, it was kind of working with that style and starting to work and balancing the tone in the performance, and that tone between kind of the comedic style of performance, or the deadpan style of performance, and then but being able to still reach those dramatic notes, and then also really just kind of having that time to build the relationship between us, myself and Arune, the producer, and the actors, and build a relationship of trust and really a friendship between us all, because we were about to ship out to this remote Scottish island for 6 weeks and be stuck out there together. So we all kind of got on really well as well.
And speaking of the location, I also wanted to ask about that experience as well, and what that process was like of deciding where to shoot and really being in that remote setting as well over.
Yeah, so it was, so I actually wrote the script in part out on Uist, and the reason for that, it was actually, it's quite embarrassing, but I was setting this film on a remote Scottish island, and I felt like I'd never really been to a remote Scottish island. I'm from Edinburgh, and I'd been to Skye and I'd been to the Highlands and things like that, but I felt like I'd never really experienced a truly remote Scottish island. And I looked on Google Maps, and Uist it's a chain of islands, and it's quite a big chain of islands out to the west, and I'd never heard of it. So I thought, that's where I'm going to write the screenplay. So I went out to Uist, and basically, I was in a peat-fired cottage in the middle of nowhere with no signal, no Wi-Fi, and I settled down there to write some of the screenplay. And then after that, we ended up going on location scouting around the sort of the rest of Scotland, because obviously the idea of shooting on a real remote Scottish island was, is very challenging. So we looked around a lot of the mainland to see if we could replicate that environment, and there was just nowhere quite like Uist. So we convinced the financiers to let us shoot the film there. And then that was it, and I'm glad that we did. But it was extremely difficult. It was a massive challenge to do it there. But yeah, I'd do it again.
And also, I wanted to ask about the film's upcoming release here in America, and what that experience was like of securing that distribution, and why you felt it was important to have the theatrical release as well.
I mean, for me, it's like I've always wanted to have, to have this film in the cinemas, and I feel like it's been very strange because even with the festivals and things like this, people have been watching the film on their laptops and in screeners and things like, and it's a film that it has incredible sort of vistas and landscapes, and the sound really envelops the audience in the cinema and kind of locks you into these characters and the story in a very different way, and brings out the character of the island a lot more as well. So, I've always really wanted this film in the cinemas, and in general, it's something that is really important to me, the big screen experience. And then and then getting this distribution deal with Focus was just incredible. It was really kind of everything we wanted for this film. So it's just been a really amazing journey, because we've had kind of lots of moments of success all the way along, with kind of initially getting the Cannes selection, and then having the film in Toronto for the premiere, and then kind of scoring this incredible deal with Focus, which is kind of a bit of a dream. So yeah, it's very special.
And also, I wanted to ask a little bit about just your overall directing style on set, and what that experience was like of going from working on the script into directing the film as well.
Yeah, I suppose I've got a very particular kind of way of making films, and I suppose I've got a particular style of filmmaking, and what I do is I really build that into the writing process. So when I'm writing, I'm really writing my vision as a director into the screenplay, and I think that's probably as well why it kind of takes me quite a long time, because I really need to kind of imagine how I'm going to shoot every scene as well while I'm writing it, and then going into to sort of moving on, and then kind of going into, say, the rehearsal process. Then you start to hear the words out loud for the first time, and kind of it all starts to become very real, and then really just kind of building the layers of that throughout, and just building, I suppose part of my direction as well is just that I'm very clear about what I want in all sort of different areas of the filmmaking. So I've got a really good relationship with my DOP, he's so brilliant, and we work so well together, and he really kind of understands my vision as well, and kind of really helps me, and elevates that, and then it's the same. It's just kind of building those relationships and working very closely with the production designer and the costume and everyone, to try and kind of explain kind of my vision and as clearly as possible, and to try and kind of make that come alive.
Okay, I think that was mainly it, but thank you again for taking the time out. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Good talking to you.
You too. Thanks
Cheers.
again. Bye.